I'm Ellis Martin, and this is the Ellis Martin Report and Money Talk Radio. Today we're speaking with William Witham, Managing Director of Pinnacle Minerals, trading on the ASX as PIM, a diversified critical minerals company listed on the Australian Stock Exchange and now expanding its footprint here in the United States. Pinnacle's recent acquisitions in Idaho and Washington State mark a significant U.S. pivot for the company, complementing its projects in South Australia, Western Australia, and Quebec, Canada. We'll discuss how Pinnacle is positioning itself in the critical minerals and defense-related metals space, from rare earths and antimony to gold, and how it's contributing to a more independent North American supply chain. Here's my conversation with Bill Witham. Bill, welcome to the program. It's great to visit with you today.
Yeah, hi Alice. Thanks for having me on your program. Looking forward to talking to you and your listeners.
Pinnacle is very new to our audience across the world and here in the U.S. in the rare earth element space. And you're focused on Idaho right now. Let's start with an overview of the company before we hammer down on Idaho.
Sure, I'd love to. Pinnacle Minerals started 4 years ago in Australia, listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. And as you said, we've been involved in the energy transition minerals since our start. We've had some kaolin projects. We've explored for lithium in Quebec. We also have rare earths projects in South Australia and Western Australia. But we're really excited about our new acquisitions in Idaho and Washington State, again, focusing on those critical minerals, but also with the added bonus of gold there.
It's always a bonus to have gold in the market, which favors both critical minerals and gold at the same time. That's highly unusual, but I think we're going to see that continuing trend for a while. And you've got some great real estate in Idaho, very close to the Stibnite Mine. Tell us about why you selected that particular region of the U.S. Have you pivoted almost completely to Idaho, or will you keep your operations going in Quebec and in South Australia? Forgive the question. I'm curious.
The reason why we chose Idaho and Washington State is a couple. First of all, the geology is amazing. You do get your rare earths, antimonies mixed up with gold. The geology is fantastic. Also, of course, the U.S. has become a fantastic jurisdiction with so much geopolitical troubles around the world. We have been in other places, but the U.S. at the moment is a great place to explore. A combination of great jurisdiction, great geology, and the team that we have here at Pinnacle, we've worked all around the world for quite a few years, experts in exploration. Antimony, as we say in Australia, antimony, but antimony is becoming more and more important. I guess everyone would probably be aware that it's one of those metals that's on the periodic table. It's really important in a lot of alloys, used a lot in high-tech industries and defense. You'll see the Department of Defense in the US investing in some antimony projects. But it's actually quite rare around the world. There are places where the mineralization, and the mineral is called stibnite, which is an antimony sulfide. There's very few places in the world where it exists in decent grades, and Idaho and Washington are some of these. So part of this is, of course, to help the US be able to mine and process its own minerals within the USA. And that's to counter, I guess, a little bit of the dominance that China has, which controls the supply and to a degree the price at the moment. And I think everyone is excited about having alternative streams of supply. And that's where we look to start this project and get into it.
Most of the rare earth elements, including lithium, are processed in China, and China has put the squeeze on us here in the U.S. and vice versa, more or less. I understand that some of the companies operating in that part of Idaho are considering some sort of modular processing plant. Were you aware of that? You must be.
Yeah, we've been looking at a couple of downstream options. Obviously, it's very early days, but we're pretty confident that we are going to have some resources there. I wasn't fully aware of the modular options, but I am aware of quite a few companies starting processing plants, looking at downstream options. Some of those are located in Montana. Some of those are located on the coast, so on the West Coast and up in Alaska. So we're keeping an eye on all of those downstream opportunities. And also there's some great new technologies coming out too, through universities such as Rice University there in the US. It's a moving space. And I think any company that is involved in exploration and discovery of these deposits must also be involved in the downstream process and keep an eye on that at all times.
What are the next steps for the company as far as exploration are concerned? I understand these are advanced exploration projects. You haven't started drilling yet, but you will at some point?
We've only just completed the acquisition. And in fact, we haven't fully finished the due diligence, but it's all going ahead to plan. Your listeners would be aware that central Idaho does get a bit of snow through the winter. And so we're looking to be drilling next year, but we moved very quickly. I was over there just the other week on the projects, doing the sampling and verifying a lot of the historical data. There's a huge amount of historical data here from the United States Geological Survey and the Idaho Geological Survey. And then we've also contracted a really good team on the ground, Python Exploration, who are based out of Idaho and Alaska. And those guys have been on the ground this week, actually. So A little bit of snowfall, but they're still managing to get around. But the winter months, we're going to concentrate on these desktop studies, get these assays from our first work done, and start applying for our permits, etc., for drilling, and looking to be drilling as soon as the thaw happens next year. So that will be around May, June, we hope.
How are you financed for an exploration program?
We're financed pretty well. There's a lot of interest on the Australian Stock Exchange at the moment for these projects. We have just raised $2 million Australian for our first phase, and then we have just also announced a second $3 million raising. So all in all, we should have around 5 million Australian in the bank, which is about 3.5 US, and that's enough for our initial exploration, our geophysics, and our initial drilling program. So we're well funded and we're lean and efficient companies. So those dollars will get them stretched quite a way.
Bill, there's always new listeners to this program. And although I understand the answer to the question I'm going to ask, it's important for me to ask it anyway. Why is Australia so active in this country, in North America, in the United States, and in Idaho in perpetuating these projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Ellis, I left uni around about 30 years ago, and I was lucky in the early days to travel around the world, mainly with airborne geophysical companies. I guess the best answer is that Australia does have a culture of exploration. I'm based here in Western Australia, and that grew up on gold mines, iron ore mines. There's a huge amount of technology here, but Australians also love to travel, and we have a culture where we can raise money on the stock exchange. We've got the technologies, and we're looking for opportunities. So Australia has, to a degree, been explored quite heavily. It's pretty flat, and then a lot of the exposed areas have been discovered already. What the US presents, and especially these places like Idaho and Washington, is where there was a great amount of activity. You're looking about 100 years ago, early 1900s, all these great mines. And then to a degree, I think the US, a lot of what we'd call the junior companies concentrate on energy and oil and gas, and the mineral companies grew quite big. So you got your Newmonts and those sort of companies and Barrick. And there's actually an opening there for smaller companies with good exploration track records to come in. And I just think that the Australian economy and culture backs exploration. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of expertise in the US, and we're hoping to collaborate with our US partners and bring that to the forefront. But it really is just that risk exploration capital in Australia it's really well known, understood. There's been many successes on the Australian Stock Exchange and companies operating right around the world. And also, I think Australians and Americans, we're family. We speak the same language. We have the same values. We value a rules-based order. And I think we're very close to US. We've just actually got a US nuclear submarine called in here the other day. So the new treaty between the AUKUS treaty, all these things just make it very easy to work in the US. And for us, it's really, I think to a degree, we see it as an extension of ourselves. And we hope that the US also sees Australia as a good friend and brothers.
What kind of uptick have you seen in the defense industry in Australia as it relates to the US? Or on its own?
It's been phenomenal. I'd say over the last 5 years, I'm not sure if your listeners have been aware, but the US has been investing heavily in Western Australia. There's a couple of quite large rare earth processors here. We've got Linus Minerals and Iluka, and they've both had over $1 billion put into them, both by the Australian government and the US government, because they already have deposits. They already had processing trains in place. And that's the sort of cooperation that's going on. I'm not sure if your listeners were aware, but our Prime Minister was with President Trump last week, and they signed a critical minerals agreement, very hand in hand working together. And that's really high profile here. And as I mentioned, the defense, the AUKUS treaty, the US are moving a lot of people to just south of Perth, Rockingham. They're setting up there's a naval base there, but it's going to become much bigger. So there's a whole lot of things going on where there's these synergies together. And I think in a way, we are fitting into that picture and helping provide a lot of those early stage minerals that are required for these things to work.
I think we need such a mining-obsessed and mining-focused country and finance country like Australia to really help us out and develop these projects here in the U.S. because they've been here for a while, like you said, over 100 years or more. And really, a lot of that initiative has come from Australia, and we certainly do appreciate that here.
Yeah, no, I think we're all happy to be involved.
I'm going to make some forward-looking statements so you don't have to, okay? There's two ways to look at your stock right now, and I'm looking at it both ways. If you like to trade, there's certainly some dips with the volatility that you can buy in, if that's your choice, audience. And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a journalist. And there's another opportunity. If you're looking for potential upside, this sector is just beginning to spark here. So long-term or short-term, definitely take a look at Pinnacle Minerals and make your own decisions. Would you not agree there, Bill?
Yeah, definitely. Everything's there on the internet. You can read for yourselves. I'm very happy to take questions if people are more interested. We're here, but do your own research. And today it's been fantastic talking with you and getting to let you know and your listeners what Pinnacle Minerals is about and what we hope to do.
Bill, I look forward to our next conversation. Don't be a stranger. Thank you so much for joining me today on the program.
Thanks, Ellis. Been fun talking to you, and thanks very much.
That was William Witham, Managing Director of Pinnacle Minerals, trading on the ASX as PIM, discussing the company's growing presence in the United States, including its promising projects in Idaho and Washington State, where Pinnacle plans to commence drilling and exploration next year. With roughly $5 million in recent capital raises and a team of veteran geologists spanning Alaska, Idaho, and Australia, Pinnacle Minerals is part of a new wave of Australian exploration companies helping advance the critical minerals agenda in North America. To learn more, go to the website, pinnacleminerals.com.au. Thanks for tuning into the Ellis Martin Report, heard across South Florida's Money Talk Radio and throughout our 7.5 million plus global network.